The CDC is defending the Biden administration's new guidelines for reopening schools during the pandemic. Dr. Rochelle Walensky told Face the Nation that data suggests the vast majority of COVID transmission takes place in the community, not inside school buildings. The White House has suggested only schools in so-called blue and yellow zones should be in fully in-person mode. New data shared with CBS News shows that just about 1% of students currently live in those zones. More than 91% live in red zones. Those are communities with significant transmission where hybrid or remote learning is recommended.
We are joined now by Michael Osterholm. He's an epidemiologist and director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota. And he was a member of President Biden's Transition COVID-19 Advisory Board. He joins us to discuss. Let's start, Michael, with that 91% in the red zones. Nobody wants that red color. Do you think these CDC guidelines are enough?
I think they are enough, particularly if you're looking at children from K to 8th grade. There we do see very little transmission between students or between students and teachers. When you get into the high school age, that's a bit of a different issue. But there really is a real red flag coming down the road, I think, and that is these new variants that we're talking about. This particular one from the United Kingdom, I think, is going to cause such a surge in cases over the course of the next 14 weeks that I think a lot of schools are going to be challenged to open at all.
So if they don't have the resources, should they still stay open? If they don't have the resources to meet the guidelines, how should that be handled?
Well, at this point, I think most schools can handle the guidelines relative to the younger kids. But the problem is that, again, as I pointed out, as case numbers rise in our communities, which is what the CDC has flagged, will be the problem. So at this point, many areas can open up. I don't think they'll be open very long because of what's coming down the pike with cases.
I want to talk about the variants in a second, Michael, but according to the CDC guidelines, vaccinating teachers is not a prerequisite to reopening. Do you think it should be?
Well, first of all, right now, Anthony, we're in a race with this variant in terms of vaccination. If we look at the numbers right now, there'll be over 30 million Americans over the age of 65 who will not have vaccine by the end of March, when we are going to be in very, very dark days. Now, we have to start making choices. Do younger people who are otherwise not at risk beyond what it is in the community for getting infected, they're not at increased risk for serious disease, we get in front of the line of those who are, if they do get infected, are likely to be seriously ill and die. So right now, I think all the governors, all the mayors, and even our federal agencies are going to have to take a step back and say, we just don't have enough vaccine to say to everybody, come on, get in line. Who are we going to start prioritizing? If I had to put my money right now on saving the most lives, keeping our hospitals open, operating as best they can, I would put all my vaccine in 65 years and older. So, and I know teachers may not want to hear that, but I think that's the right message.
I understand that, Michael. So you're talking about, I mean, if you're talking about 14 weeks before this reaches a peak, is that what you're saying? You're saying this leads us right into the beginning of the summer.
Into the next 14 weeks, I think, will be the worst of the pandemic. People don't want to hear that. But if we look at what these variants are doing, particularly this one from the United Kingdom, and see what it did in Europe, see what it's done in the Middle East, it's now beginning to start that here in the United States. Yep. We are going to see that unfold. So overall, with schools, they have to fit into that. And I think what we're going to see is big efforts to open the schools. We will get some open beyond what we have now, but then it's going to likely be a real challenge for them in the next 6 to 8 weeks as these surge numbers begin to increase, and this will last for at least likely up to 14 weeks.
There are recent cases, Michael, of people testing positive for COVID even after they've been vaccinated. How does that happen?
Well, first of all, these vaccines are really, really good, Gail. They're very good, but they're not 100% necessarily. And so even if a vaccine is 98% effective, it means that 2% of the people could still get infected after being vaccinated. So this isn't a surprise, and it still reinforces, though, however, how good these vaccines are, because these cases that we're talking about of infection after 2 doses of vaccine, or even for that matter 1 dose, actually are very, very rare.
So are there different guidelines if you've had 1 vaccine and different guidelines if you've had 2 vaccines? Because people are still arguing about whether we should be wearing masks. Can you tell the difference between the 1 and the 2 and the mask, please?
Yeah, well, first of all, 1-dose vaccines are something we have to look at very seriously, or as I just pointed out, a lot of Americans are not going to be protected at all as we go into this next big surge with the variant. 2 doses are ideal. I wish everyone in this country right now had 2 doses of vaccine, but that's not going to happen until mid or late summer, that vaccine availability. In the meantime, masks are the best thing we have in terms of reducing transmission, of course, in addition to that of just distancing yourself. Don't put yourself in harm's way. Many people can't do that. You yourselves, you have to go to work every day. You don't have that choice of protecting yourself. So that's where masks can play a key role.
Michael Osterholm, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We appreciate it.